dear viewers of Equinoxe Television, thank you so much for being with us on this edition of the news. We begin right away with our major stories tonight. As usual, it is already the Christmas season, and the city of Douala, Cameroon in general, is beaming with all the Christmas colors, and Equinoxe Television, in its solidarity move, extended a hand of charity and support to the less privileged in our society across the national territory. And also in this discussion, we will be coming back to the human rights violations in the Amadu Bamuke affairs. Stay with us for details and more. Welcome back, viewers, and a Merry Christmas in advance to you all. We begin this edition of the news with Christmas preparations in Douala and in Cameroon. In general, we just told you in the headlines that it is a Christmas season and the entire city of Douala is beaming with all the Christmas colors. Some communities here in Douala prefer to come together, buy food items and share among themselves. They say it is a way to combat the high cost of living in Cameroon. Let's have more with our staff lady Mala Glory.
Smiles on their faces as they assure their Christmas menu will be rich with this beef. A habit for this group of women and men in the Douala 4 subdivision who each year come together, contribute money and buy in bulk. This is to manage the hike in the prices of basic commodities on the market and to make purchase easy during festive seasons for each member.
I'm a member of the end of year meet group. In fact, I've been here since the opening of this group and I've been enjoying myself so wonderfully. You know, now in the market things are very, very expensive. But with this, you can feed your family, you can enjoy the end of year ceremony and festivities.
It's my second year and I will say it is very, very satisfactory. Now we often do this during festive periods, so we can share with our family members and enjoy the Christmas together.
Besides meat, other items are also bought in large quantities and the sharing is equal.
You have meat, you have sabon, you have oil, you have rice. This will help you not to hurry going to the market. This helps us to stay now in the house.
When it concerns the sharing of either meat or whatever, it is very, very transparent because we use ballot. We use ballot papers and everybody draws ballots. So nobody at the end of the day will think that he's cheated or he or she is cheated. Nobody's cheated. So because we draw those ballots and everybody goes home satisfied.
It is a culture common amongst English-speaking Cameroonians, especially those who migrated from the northwest and the southwest region due to the ongoing crisis in that part of the country. A culture which, according to them, keeps them together.
Like Mala Glory said there in that report, it is commonplace in the Anglophone community to come together, buy and share during Christmas. And now we stay in the southwest region of the country, precisely in the Kupe Maninguba division, where the divisional officer for Tombe has assured the local population of the Nkak village that they can peacefully celebrate the feast of Christmas and also New Year. He said security has been reinforced in his area of jurisdiction. As Innocent Asset tells us in the report, which comes up next.
The Nkak Palace Esplanade are gathered some natives of the village, members of the traditional council, religious and local authorities, as well as security officers, headed by the divisional officer Nyam Leonard. Being a festive period, the divisional officer embarks on a sensitization tour in villages in Tomber subdivision. While at the Nkak Palace, he encouraged the population to celebrate without fear, for security has been heightened to ensure their safety.
If by error or by chance some people still there for a year, well, I hope so, still there.
He advises those still holding arms in bushes with the intention of kidnapping for ransom, disruption of peace and unity to drop them down.
Luckily enough, I think that those ones are not here.
Nyam Leonard warns refusal will mean facing its hurt from deployed military men working hand in glove with local vigilantes.
That everything is well.
Chief Mbongwarta Mesumbe of Nkak village expresses the need for all to love one another, stay in peace for a splendid Christmas and New Year celebration.
Enhance and consolidate the love that exists in Nkak, so that Christmas bells start chiming in the village. And above all, we have called on the villagers to stay in love and unity, to stay in peace. Let them light the love from their hearts.
Consolidation of peace and adoption of a spirit of tolerance is the principal message served to the population of Tombel as they feast and enter into a new year, 2023.
And now we come back to the Amadou Vamuke affair. Cameroon has appeared on the census every year since the year 2014, with some currently jailed journalists since 2016. And this is a statement from the Committee to Protect Journalists on the case of Cameroon. And it comes after journalists, and also he is the former director of the national broadcaster, the CRTV, Amadou Vamuke, was jailed or sentenced to 12 years imprisonment. Let's now have more with a staffman for me and Phil Sander.
Adding to the jail term slammed on former CRTV managing director, the Committee to Protect Journalists condemned the sentence. According to the CPJ's Angela Quintal, the Tuesday's late-night conviction and sentencing of Amadou Vamuke on retaliatory charges of embezzlement is a monumental travesty of justice and could be tantamount to. The CPJ says Vamuke has already spent more than 6 years in arbitrary detention, and prosecutors must agree not to contest his appeal. Given his age, failing health, and the overcrowded, unhygienic conditions at the Kondenge Central Prison in Yaoundé, the CPJ demands that Vamuke be immediately allowed to go home on bail. The committee cited his lawyer, Barrister Alice Com, who says Vamuke's arrest was a reprisal for his management of the CRTV. She highlights that the official reasons for his arrest is a pretext. Vamuke was arrested on July 29, 2016 and is the longest serving of 5 journalists currently imprisoned in Cameroon. This is according to the CPJ's annual prison census of jailed journalists. The Committee to Protect Journalists says Cameroon is the 3rd worst jailer of journalists in Africa after Egypt and Eritrea.
We will be coming back to start in our second part of the news. And now we talk human rights. The National Human Rights Commission in Cameroon is seeking ways of reducing the number of cases of human rights violations in the country. The stakeholders equally announced their total number of free numbers 1523, which will be used to call and report human rights violations across the country. Immaculate Fogwe is our lady on that beat.
Extrajudicial killings, abusive evictions, rape, domestic violence, and lack of accountability for serious abuses remain the major human rights abuses recorded in Cameroon. In the conflict northwest and southwest regions, several cases of human rights violations have been registered. According to victims of human rights abuses, the unfair justice system, poor accountability, and poor investigation of the arising cases are some of the major reasons why human rights violations are still on the rise. In the course of a meeting that grouped stakeholders, they brainstormed on some major challenges hampering the promotion and protection of human rights and how they can overcome them.
And we have significantly increased the number of complaints received and handled this year in comparison with what happened last year. So we are doing more and more year by year in protecting human rights in our beloved country.
According to Professor James Mwange, the launching of the toll-free number 1523 is a major achievement.
Many Cameroonians and even all the Cameroonians from inside the country and abroad to submit complaints on human rights violations. Up to now, we have received more than 900 calls from that toll-free number.
The 2023 budget was adopted with a new plan of activities drawn for the year 2023.
And now in the northwest region of the country, security forces have apprehended some individuals who were involved in falsifying documents in that part of the country. Fake birth certificates and also fake driver's licenses were found in their possession. Let's now have more with our northwest-based correspondent, Bustela.
Three suspects by name, Conway Nestor, 20 years old, 58 years old Chifu Julius and 39 years old Mufred were apprehended on Tuesday. The judicial police say at the time of their arrest, they were in possession of fake official stamps, fake official documents and certificates including non-convictions, death certificates, birth certificates, certificates of nationality, court judgments, first co-living certificates and forged communal stamps.
The case we have in front of us right now is one of forgery, and just to remind ourselves, it's punishable under Section 314 of the Criminal Penal Code.
Their customers have been the general population who are in search of these documents to either go into the public service, sit for public examinations, or for other reasons. These fake documents have rather landed the population in more difficulties. There are many people without the originals of their national identity cards more than 5 years since they were established. Judicial police authorities say their unit is tracking down those involved in the network and also those in possession of fake documents.
Our ultimate goal here is to reduce to the barest minimum the number of potential victims so that they shouldn't fall prey to the maneuvers of white-collar criminals of this nature.
In 2023, competitive entrance examinations will be launched. The population are called upon to be vigilant and go to the competent authorities to have their documents established.
And now we come back to the celebration of Christmas. We know Christmas is a period of love and also a season of sharing. Equinoxe Television, in its solidarity and love, extended a hand of charity to the less privileged persons in Douala and also across the national territory. It has been a tradition for the Equinoxe group to take parcels to the underprivileged for about 20 years now. Let's now have more about that caravan with our staff lady, Lucy Diengo, is here.
Like every year, Equinoxe TV and his team answered present in the early hours of Wednesday, 21st of December 2022. Together with some of his partners, Union Camerounaise, the Brasseries, UCB, and General Express Voyage Travel Agency, under the instruction of his Director General, worked hand in glove with Equinoxe TV. They prepared gifts to visit underprivileged children here in the city of Douala, a tradition that has been existing for more than 20 years. Equinoxe TV, with the support of some of his viewers each year, have tirelessly worked to ensure that this category of children have reasons to smile. After everything was packed into the bus, exactly 2 p.m., the convoy, led by the Chief Executive Officer of Equinoxe TV, left for Bojongo, Douala 4 Subdivision. Targeting about 14 orphanages, the team, despite the odds, braved it to the nooks and crannies of the targeted areas. After a long ride, the convoy makes its first stop at the Canaan orphanage. The kids and founder welcomed the team with songs, words of excitement. In an atmosphere full of emotions, the kids received their gifts. After receiving, they expressed gratitude with prayers.
So I'm so happy for the Equinoxe TV coming here to visit us. I thank them for what they are doing for us since 3 years. I thank them.
Toutes ces personnes qui, à travers la chaîne de médias Equinoxe, pensent à soutenir chaque année les enfants encadrés dans notre structure.
Merci Equinoxe pour le cadeau de Noël.
Sure, we would have loved to stay longer, but we still have a long way to go. Heading to Saint Anne Marie Orphanage, the joy of Equinoxe has always been to see these children celebrate like others.
A lot of emotion every time that I'm here to see your children. Unfortunately, since 2 years, their father is not in town. But she still manages these children, and I hope that God will help her to take care of others who suffering.
It is, I just lack words because it has been a tradition to the Equinoxe TV to be taking care of these orphans of Saint Anil, especially this time that I have the loss of my husband, whom we are doing it together, and I'm trying to do it alone now. So you've shown that there are children that cannot be abandoned. You continue your work from the time that you started up to now that my husband is not.
Happiness is all what we could see.
We say thank you to Equinoxe TV for our Christmas gifts. May God bless you abundantly and give you long life. Hey!
Straight away, we are heading to Douala 5 subdivision. The convoy continues. In same spirit, Equinoxe team distributes to other orphanages. With much gratitude, he thanks the Chief Executive Officer for his sacrifice and what he offers to young Cameroonians.
Your love and for your presence. And I pray that may God continue to bless you abundantly, and may you continue to come back here and may us celebrate.
I just want to sincerely say thank you, a big thank you to the entire Equinoxe team for this traditional visit of visiting orphans, taking care of them, with all the stuff that they have brought. First, I want to say thank you for your presence, thank you for the gift items, thank you for your love and your support. It's not easy to take care of orphans, sheltering and all that it has to go with it. But when you have people coming to stand with you, you are encouraged. So we want to say a big thank you to Equinoxe.
Throughout the night, Equinoxe TV and radio maintain determination to reach out to these children. Noel and Kerr 2022 was remarkable.
Wonderful initiative there and worth emulating. And now we talk sports. Cameroon's goalkeeper Andre Onana has retired from the national team. Andre Onana made the announcement today on his social media platforms. And Brazil is still the best football nation across the world. Morocco is the best in Africa. Cameroon on its part has also moved up on the classification table, taken out recently by FIFA. Let's now have more with Sumaji and Gabriel.
On his Twitter handle that the information about his retirement from the national football team was made public. Andre Onana, who has been Cameroon's #1 choice goalkeeper for several years, says no matter how beautiful a story may be, it has an end, but his feelings will never change because his Cameroonian heart will continue to beat wherever he goes. The departure of Andre Onana from the Lions' Den comes several weeks after the 26-year-old goalkeeper left the national football team halfway in their Qatari adventure after a disagreement with coach Rigobert Song Bahanak. Andre Onana has played for Cameroon 34 times, with 2022 being his peak period. Andre Onana was assistant goalkeeper when Cameroon won the AFCON in Gabon in 2017 and was the main goalkeeper when Cameroon ended the AFCON on home soil at the 3rd place. Andre Onana started his career at the Samuel Eto'o's Academy before moving to Barcelona in Spain, then loaned to Cornella at his youthful age. At the senior level, Andre Onana passed through Vista Alegre on loan, Jong Ajax of Amsterdam in Holland, and Internazionale of Milan in Italy. Elsewhere, notwithstanding their average performance at the FIFA World Cup, Cameroon has gained 10 more places in the latest FIFA World Ranking for the month of December 2022. According to the rankings made public by FIFA, Cameroon is now ranked 33rd in the world and 4th in Africa. This is as a result of their victory over Brazil, draw against Serbia, and defeat to Switzerland at the just ended World Cup. Cameroon ends the year on a comfortable spot. The biggest movers by points were the Atlas Lions of Morocco, who had 108.85 points to move 11 places up the FIFA World Ranking. Morocco leapfrogged Senegal to be new number 1 in Africa. This was thanks to the performance of the Atlas Lions at the FIFA World Cup, which saw them reaching the semi-finals for the first time. According to the FIFA rankings, the top 5 African nations include Morocco, Senegal, Tunisia, Cameroon, and Nigeria. At the international level, Brazil kept tight to their number 1 spot, even though they didn't make it to the finals of the FIFA World Cup. The newly crowned champions Argentina are second best, while Croatia moved 5 places up the rankings because of her performance at the FIFA World Cup. Croatia is now on spot number 7 in the world.
And that classification table was published recently by the World Football Governing Body, FIFA. Viewers, that was it for the first part of the news. Thank you so much for always according us your time. Don't go away. Talking Points comes up next. And our guest on Talking Points tonight is the head of the Africa program for the Committee of the Protection of Journalists. She is Angela Quintor. She talks to our reporter Babila Jonathan on the jailing of journalists in Cameroon, in Africa, and also in the world.
What's the CPJ saying about the case of Amadou Vamoke, journalist who has been in detention for over 6 years, in pre-trial detention for over 6 years, and now has been slapped a jail term by the Special Criminal Court?
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. The Committee to Protect Journalists is very concerned. In fact, we condemn what has happened to Amadou Vamoke and the entire process that has got him to today, where we now know that he received a very late night sentence of 12 years for alleged embezzlement. Frankly, I guess it really is just an indication of how the rule of law and due process has been abused in cases, particularly of those of journalists like Amadou, but also of the other journalists who remain in jail in Kondongi.
Right. So, what are you asking for about that specific case? His release?
Sure. We're asking for his release. Clearly, we have to respect the court process. However flawed we believe that the process has been, and that we are asking authorities to not contest any appeal. And we do understand from Amadou's lawyers that there will be an appeal. We believe that given his age, he is 72, given his state of health, given the fact that he was detained for more than 6 years and continues to be detained, but in those 6 years had his trial adjourned over 140 times, that at the very least he should be sent home, that he should be able to wait for the process to unfold. He is not a threat to anyone. And that is what we are requesting. Ultimately, we believe the charges should, in fact, not go ahead, that he should be found to have been unlawfully and illegally convicted, and that he should be released and be able to spend time with his family. We're very, very concerned about his state of health. You know, we have seen journalists die in jail in Kondengi. We had it with Samuel Wazizi, we've had it with Bibi Ngota, and I think that the Cameroonian government needs to ensure that it does the right thing, given the state of health that we know Amadou is suffering from.
All right, you mentioned the case of Samuel Wazizi, whose corpse has not been handed over to the family till today, and there is no information about it. The Ministry of Defense is not saying anything about it. What's the CPJ doing about this specific case, and maybe the case of Thomas Awa and the others?
Sure. So let's talk about Samuel Wazizi. I mean, that case has had a chilling effect on the press generally in Cameroon. We have not given up. I mean, there is no doubt that we need justice for Wazizi. The fact that his body has yet to be returned to his family, the fact that he died in custody in the circumstances that he did, and that there has still been no accountability for that death is totally unacceptable. Now, you may know that CPJ was involved in the court processes in trying to ensure, when initially he seemed to have disappeared in military custody, in attempts to trying to get to the truth and going to court to find out there were habeas corpus applications. It was only all those months later that the military then announced that he had actually died a couple of days after he had been taken into custody. That process of finding answers through the court process continues because the domestic remedies have to be, in essence, we have to go through all of those before we can then go to other international fora. And that is the process. It's a painstakingly slow process. But one thing I can say is that this Committee to Protect Journalists and others who are involved in trying to find justice for Wazizi are not going to give up. This is not a case that we will forget, and we will continue every avenue that we can to try and find out what happened, but more importantly, to hold those responsible accountable. Then you have the other journalists who remain in jail. Let me say that in terms of our prison census, Cameroon is the third worst jailer of journalists in Africa. There are 5 journalists currently in jail, all of them in Kondengi Central, for their work. It includes Thomas Awa, it's T. Conrad, it's Mancho Babixi, it's Kingsley Njorka, and of course Amadou. Kingsley has been in detention for more than 2 years. He has been awaiting trial. In that sense, he has not been convicted. And what has happened in that case is in fact another travesty. It just shows how the system is being abused, and that people are allowed to wallow, as they have, in pretrial detention for years on end without any sense of trying to hurry up their cases at least and ensure that there is some sense of fair trial. There hasn't been a fair trial in his case. In terms of the 3 others that I've mentioned, they were convicted by a military tribunal. They have appealed. Their appeal is still stuck. There is an administrative block. So they sit in Kondengi again, waiting for their cases to be heard and for a competent court to actually do the right thing and ensure that that earlier conviction is overturned. We're asking the government to do what they have done previously, because there has been certainly many arrests of journalists over the years, and there also have been releases, that it is time to release all journalists in Cameroon. that are currently detained. It's the right thing to do. Journalism is not a crime. None of these journalists have done anything to warrant the long sentences that they have been given or the long detentions that they currently have without any sense of free trial or a free trial process. I think that is why the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention has come out and actually said that these journalists are arbitrarily detained and called on the Cameroonian state to release them. And CPJ continues to echo the calls that no journalist should be behind bars and that all these journalists, all 5 of them, should be immediately released. It's the festive season, it's Christmas, we're going into a new year. President Paul Biya has been in power for over 40 years. Let him do the right thing, be magnanimous, ensure that these journalists are pardoned and that they can return home.
Have you been talking to the Cameroonian authorities? What are they saying?
So it has been, I think, one of my greatest regrets is that the Cameroonian authority, as the Anglophone crisis has unfolded and deepened, has become far less open to engaging with the Committee to Protect Journalists. In the past, we have had a relationship where we have been able to talk to government officials. We have seen over the years that we have been stonewalled, that our calls, our emails have not been answered. I myself had tried to visit Cameroon and had not received a visa, or certainly had the whole process slowed down that I couldn't actually visit Cameroon. And my appeal is that one opens dialogue. There is no sense from CPJ that we are in any way trying to undermine the authority of the state. I think what we want to do is to be able to speak to government. We want to reopen the conversations that we've had with former government ministers of communication, and that we've again appealed to the minister, to Renee Sadi, to others in the presidency, in the cabinet, to take our hands in the new year and to walk together to finding a solution and to ensure that press freedom flourishes in Cameroon, that journalists are able to do their jobs, but ultimately that the citizens of Cameroon can have the information, the plurality of information, diverse information that is necessary for them to make important choices in their lives, in their everyday existence. That is our appeal to the government of Cameroon.
All right. From your findings, you are the senior researcher of the CPJ for Africa. From your findings, what are the enabling factors? What are the factors that create an enabling environment for journalists to be threatened, jailed, killed in Cameroon?
I think part of the problem is the conflict that one sees in Cameroon, but I also think that the use of the terror law that came in 2015, a law that has effectively been abused by authorities, has been a major factor in what we have seen over the years in terms of the detention of journalists and also the censoring of journalists, because those who are not in jail or have not been killed are effectively self-censoring, or because they have been detained, the signal has been sent to the press generally in Cameroon that their existence, their very being, can be threatened by a state that does not hold the principles of fair trial and international standards on justice holy. And that has certainly had an effect, I think, in terms of what the public is able to get in terms of credible and accurate information from a diversity of sources. And that is something that one really needs to work to guard against. Journalism and credible and accurate journalism is an important part of democracy. And any government who embraces democracy should be allowing that environment to flourish. But instead, we are seeing the use of legislation and the arrests of journalists to actually close down that space And that is why we say that journalists are not terrorists, that the terrorism law that has been used to actually jail the majority of journalists is something that has been abused by the state, and that we urge that that law be reformed and that the journalists who are currently in jail be released.
All right. Some of the journalists arrested in connection with issues that have to do with the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions. They are said to have come in contact with some of the secessionists in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. Is it forbidden for a journalist to, in doing his job of investigative journalism, to come in contact with people who are identified as secessionists, terrorists, or rebels?
Certainly not. I mean, journalists are there to be able to do their jobs. You have to talk to everyone. I am a South African journalist. In apartheid South Africa, in the dying years before we moved to our democracy and the transition to democracy, I was in contact with members of the liberation movements who were in exile, for example, in Zimbabwe, in Lusaka, and whatever. I was doing my job as a journalist, getting information from them, right? Did that make me a terrorist because I was interviewing people who the then apartheid government believed were terrorists? No. That was part of my job. I mean, the irony is that the very people that the South African government at the time and who I was interviewing are now in government and are no longer terrorists. Journalists are there to get information and to ensure that the public is informed. By interviewing someone who one government might believe is a terrorist does not make a journalist a terrorist. That is part of the job. You talk to whoever you can in your attempt to ensure that you get the facts and the truth out to the public.
All right, let's open up on the continent and on the globe at large. What's the situation on the African continent and globally speaking?
So, our annual prison census is a snapshot of the number of journalists that are in jail on the 1st of December of each year. And on the continent, there are at least 56 journalists who were in jail on the 1st of December. As I said, Cameroon is the third worst jailer of journalists in Africa, after Egypt and then Eritrea. So in sub-Saharan Africa, let's be clear, Cameroon is the second worst. I mean, that is not a record to be proud of. That is not a record that any nation should want to have behind their name. There is no reason to have these journalists in jail. There is no reason to have that sort of record that sends a signal to the world that you are not a democracy, that you are actually not someone that encourages the democratic rights that are internationally recognized the world over. So the situation in Africa remains of concern, obviously, because what you see is the vast majority of journalists are being detained on anti-state charges. But worldwide, we have seen a record number of journalists in jail, okay? So we actually have 363 journalists globally detained as of December 1st. Now, that is a record number. We have been keeping records for the past 30 years. So it shows how democracy is in retreat worldwide, not only in Africa. So, for example, we have seen that Iran, where you have the protests that have been going on, that Iran is now one of the worst jailers of journalists. China is up there too. So essentially what we have governments the world over who are seeing journalists as somehow being the enemy and as those who are part of the problem, when in fact what journalists are simply trying to do is trying to ensure that citizens remain informed. Is this going to be another record year next year? We hope that this will not be the case. We hope that when journalists, when governments, as we saw, who were at in the US, for example, meeting the US president, all talking about, respect for democratic rights, wanting to ensure that trade relations improve between nations, that in fact one of the important pillars will be the respect for the public's right to know and for journalists to have the right to media freedom, which is denied, as I said, not only on the continent, but worldwide.
All right, let's end this interview with this. What should be done? Who is expected to do what to put an end to this problem of arrest, detention, and killing of journalists?
I think that the responsibility obviously lies with state parties, with governments, but it is a two-way thing. When you have a situation as you do around the world, there are also responsibilities on journalists to also ensure that they can be as accurate as possible. It does not excuse, and let me make this clear, that even when journalists do falter and do make mistakes, we are not saying that they should be allowed to get away with it. But what we are saying is that there are other mechanisms outside the criminal justice system to deal with bad journalism. So I think ultimately the responsibility lies on governments to allow an enabling environment for media freedom and therefore the right of the public, of citizens to get information to flourish. And therefore I would put that at the door of any government, is to ensure that no journalist is behind bars, that journalists are safe, that journalists are not killed for their work, and when they are killed, that there is accountability and not impunity. Cameroon has actually been on our prison census since 2014. Okay, so it has consistently arrested journalists and kept journalists detained since 2014. So it is one of the countries that has been consistent in its jailing of journalists, which of course really does show a bad record in terms of its commitment to basic human rights. And then just to say that it also, after Eritrea, has journalists who have been serving the longest time in prison. So
as that was Angela Quintals speaking, just to remind you that she is the head of the Africa program for the Committee to Protect Journalists. And viewers, thank you so much for being with us. Stay with us on Equinoxe Television.
Equinoxe Télévision, au-delà de l'image, nous rendons compte.
If you suspect you may have a coronavirus infection, please call your healthcare provider in advance and let them know you are coming. This can help them be prepared. WHO recommends preventive measures to reduce your risk. Wash your hands frequently using soap and water or an alcohol-based hand rub. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth. Avoid eating raw meat and unnecessary contact with wild animals. Avoid close contact with anyone with flu-like symptoms. When coughing and sneezing, cover your mouth and nose with a flex elbow or use a tissue. Take particular precaution while traveling. Seek medical care early.
My name is Abai Schultz, and I am the founder and creative director of ZAF.